Welcome YouTube. This is Acid Roots and welcome to part 15 of Let's Play Donkey Kong Country 3. We're going to start this episode off with the death, and then the first few minutes of this are going to be kind of more mishaps in this stage. So yeah, it's just basically, this is World 6 for us here. It's got a lot of these kind of egregious stages that just happen to be a real pain in the ass, but we're going to just kind of put on our positive about face and kind of get some of these in motion. Yeah, I mean, most of the time when you think of, like, the phrase about face, it's usually something that just is kind of opposite to, like, the situation, but the thing about this game is it's kind of lazy difficulty. It just kind of slyly introduced some tough segments. As far as that kind of goes, but, you know, this with knowing previous games of this, I kind of know at least some of what this game is up to. It's just kind of the concept about it, but it's just kind of having your wits about you and just being able to do some of this stuff. I mean, through trial and error, it doesn't take too long to figure some of these stages out, just because it kind of counts on the fact that you're going to die, essentially, just because of misplaced, mistimed enemies and that type of stuff. But once you get the hang of it, and that's kind of the thing about a lot of Super Nintendo games like Contra 3 and this Castlevania 4, some of those type games, even though I don't really own Castlevania 4, I just would have to say, like, from what I remember, there's just a lot of tough as nails, some of these games, man. It's just kind of the situation. It's just kind of like hell. Relatively kind of happens to be the concept. But yeah, keep in mind that this game does want you to collect those bear coins. If you saw that and just wonder what the hell it is, because I haven't really talked about it, it's kind of a concept 103% the game. But this is just kind of a casual blind playthrough that's purely for the merit of recreation. So yeah, you should be watching this 2 o'clock in the morning, having like a Red Baron pizza or Domino's pizza, something like that, or KFC, something of the like. This for early morning sessions. I mean, really, I would suspect up to this episode, you could probably watch this in about 2.5 hours, something like that, somewhere in that context. This kind of works in that setting. But, yeah, it's probably about as hazy outside as, well, I guess that doesn't make sense, but you get the idea. So, it's kind of underneath. Like, you know, I don't know what it is about video games. I just kind of feel like me trying to talk about things, you say, well, why is Acid Root such a retro channel? And I look after it. I don't know. I just have not really had much intention to kind of gather and put forth like some extra stuff in terms of like, I mean, apart from Katie's Quest, that Katy Perry video game I did a ways back, I just can't think of an overabundance of video games in recent times that I feel like would kind of be congruent and fit context on this channel. I just feel like this is definitely more of a retro one, but then that's just kind of the concept for people, whether or not you're older and you just want to reminisce on this game, or if you just never have heard of Donkey Kong Country 3 or something like that. It's just kind of as the whole situation. I mean, it's just kind of, I mean, I may not be exactly fastidious and peppy with putting these episodes out. It's just kind of, you know, you just have to kind of say and such that, losing my train of thought here. I keep thinking, yeah, that's the whole thing about this, is just me kind of thinking and such that the whole stage is not going to take place on the rope. Keep in mind, for folks, if you really don't know about this stage or whatever, this is the gimmick. You know, there are gimmick stages. This game does it a lot. And alright, so this is the new recording segment. This is where we beat this episode, so yeah, I just would have to say there are gimmick stages, and there's a lot of them later on that are just going to be like, hey, you're going to be doing this, and we know you're going to get tired of it, but that's the point. Just whether or not you can handle such a thing. Truthfully, I would like more video games like this, just because there weren't a bunch of video games that just, I mean, when you think about the sheer number of video games that have you climb up a burning rope, and that's like the whole stage, this doesn't happen. Like Sonic the Hedgehog or some of those type games doesn't really seem like they would do that nowadays, but I don't know. Sonic is just kind of in like a continual loop of trying to get back to what it was back in the 90s and stuff, and I just would have to say it's just kind of like, I don't know. That's most video games, though. The more I look after it, I just have to say, you know, these times were great. This is kind of the concept, is just, you know, yeah, you've got Call of Duty and Halo and some of those games that kick ass, but this is like the true merit of where you didn't need Call of Duty type games to really kick ass. That just really happens to be the thing. You know, they need to make more games like this. Like Shredder's Revenge was a definite highlight of 2022, but it just doesn't happen often enough. They need to do Double Dragon, even though I dislike the Double Dragon games just because of how tough they are. It's a great game, great kind of type game for that sort of thing. Double Dragon and Final Fight and some of those type games, but they're just too hard. I mean, that's the only reason why I don't refer back to those games. I mean, I own Final Fight 1 for the Super Nintendo and the second one, but I just kind of look after. I don't ever play them just because Final Fight 1 is just way too tough. I mean, I would go back to it often. It's got brilliant kind of mechanics for gameplay as to how the game works, and it's just easy, simple kind of beat 'em up type game. But the problem with it is just the fact that it's, you know, even though there's only 5 stages, it still is nightmarish trying to get through them. It's just kind of, I like that game. I mean, Final Fight 3, if it wasn't exuberantly kind of expensive to kind of have that'd be another one that would be a great game to kind of showcase, just because you can actually take a computer buddy along with you. I mean, if you don't have someone to be your player too, you can have the computer go along with you. I think most of the time the computer winds up getting vanquished pretty quickly, but it still helps. It at least will allow you to get to stage 3 or 4 out of 6. You just have to be good enough to beat the game eventually on your own. And that's what the first one should have done. This kind of happens to be a thing. But they just need more concepts. Like I talked about that before with Shredder's Revenge. I mean, I like the concept of it, but, you know, bringing a computer buddy along for the ride just works. I mean, that's something that needs to be stabilized. It's the same thing with Street Fighter. Like, a particular thing I like about Street Fighter is dramatic battle. If you've ever played, like, Street Fighter Alpha 3, I mean, that has, like, a mode where you can be Ryu and Ken, or you can be, like, there's a couple of, like, Bison's, like, sniper dolls that you can be, and you can either be the two of them, or you can be, like, I'm just gonna beat the stage, I'm just like, fuck it, you know, to break away from that for a second. I'm just, fuck that stage, fuck getting the extra little coin and stuff. I'm just gonna take my lumps and beat that stage without any other difficulty, because I did not want to do it again. Then I'm definitely gonna go save just to make sure. But yeah, like I was saying, I mean, just to kind of talk about some of these things, like the Street Fighter dramatic battle. I mean, it's a brilliant concept. I just think I would most definitely think that fighting games like Killer Instinct and Mortal Kombat, I mean, wouldn't that be brilliant if they brought back Mortal Kombat from 1992 and 1994, but let you bring a friend along, or at least a computer-controlled buddy along, so you could actually beat those guys? Like, some of those assholes, like the Minotaur boss, I don't remember his name, but Goro and Shao Kahn and all those different ones, you might actually be able to beat some of them if you had, like, the extra help. It's just a concept that they need to do, and it's just dumb that it hasn't happened. Because I mean, I like Mortal Kombat. It's a great game, has great characters. It's real kind of, they have some brilliant character design. It's just a fantastic engine and that type of stuff, but it's just way too fucking hard. That's the thing. You really have to be a manic gamer to be able to excel at that game. There's just not very many folks left. I mean, maybe there were a bunch of them back in 1994 or 1996, but it's just like, forget about it nowadays. So, I mean, I feel like most people who probably could beat Mortal Kombat, and especially, don't even talk to me about, like, the toughest difficulty. I don't even know. Those are like godsend players that can actually beat Mortal Kombat on very hard. Forget about it. I mean, you will get fatality, you'll get brutality, you'll get animality, all those different little attacks that they do. Any of those games is just manic. I mean, for absolute kind of, like, I forget the word, like, what a glutton for punishment. There's like a word for that. I don't know what it's called. Someone who is like a bad version of a daredevil that likes getting their ass kicked. I mean, just that kind of concept of being able to do that sort of thing. Killer Instinct is the same way. I hate the final boss in that game. And there's just a bunch of those characters. Fighting games are just idiotic. I mean, that's the whole concept. I mean, it's rewarding to be able to have the clout if you can actually do it, but it just takes, not many people have the practice to be able to do that nowadays. So, but yeah, it would just be that much easier. At least if Shao Kahn or some of those ones could actually beat you and your friend with you, it'd be a little bit different. But this is a brilliant concept, something that needs to go on. I think I would prefer to play like a 3-player Mortal Kombat as opposed to like the new remakes that they make of it now, because they just don't have the same design. I mean, like the you know, I want to say it's like Tobias Boone, you know, those the people that made the 90s Mortal Kombats. I just don't know if they're still involved with it anymore. You get different development teams. That's the same reason like why the Sonic the Hedgehog games don't work anymore, is just because the people who worked on it when it was in its prime are gone. You know, development teams leave, and then the ones who made the game kick ass back in 1993 or 1996, they're not available anymore. You know, they've moved on and retired and that type stuff, and then it's just kind of like you just don't get the same essence. But it's not to say there's anything against like today's developers, but when it comes to remaking these games, a lot of times it leaves a lot to be desired. And it's just, you know, that discord is just something that happens with video games, because you got people who still play video games from like the Super Nintendo and PlayStation 1 days, maybe even the NES in some cases, but just to kind of look after it, just kind of, that's the whole routine about it. It's tough, you know. But I don't know, that's just video games of today. You just have to wonder what games apart from like Call of Duty and Fortnite are even worth playing. But, you know, if I, you know, had my own video game development team, that's the sort of stuff that I would do. It's just about, you know, chalking like good $80,000 to those original developers and saying, hey, get out of retirement, we'll pay you 5 digits or 6 digits worth of money, and then doing it, you know. I'm surprised that more people, and maybe they do it, but I don't know, it's really kind of the concept of looking at today's video games. But yeah, just to talk about this stage, like, you have to be the swordfish in this one, and the whole theme, and this is another gimmick stage where the stage gets dark, and it is doable without turning on the lights by hitting the yellow fish, but it just kind of makes it tricky just because you can't see enough to avoid most of the enemies. But the thing that pisses me off about this stage is just the swordfish. When he hits the illuminating fish, he kind of has a recoil, and sometimes they put an enemy there. I mean, they're kind of sneaky with the enemy placement. You recoil, and then you get hit by an enemy. There's nothing you can do about it. And this really happens to be a thing. It's just kind of, I mean, the little regular fish don't have a recoil, but the fat fish kind of do. And it's just like, you know, you need to turn on that light, but you have to hold back so you don't hit that urchin right there. So, but yeah. So just get used to the swordfish in this stage. This is kind of the concept. Let's go ahead and take a bite of your pizza, that type of stuff. Just one of those concepts as far as like, we're going to be in this stage for a little bit. This is another one that kind of trolled me a bunch. Like when I said in the previous episode that these were the go to hell stages, that's definitely the concept. The whole World 6 can suck a cock. I mean, it's just kind of the thing. It really happens to be the thing, but I'm sure World 7, I know at least in World 7, to spoil it if you don't know some of this game, there's a stage in particular that's a forest stage that kind of has like a lightning where you can get struck by lightning in it, and you have to avoid that. You have to be really quick, and that's one. I just wonder how that one's going to go. And then there's another one that I really hate that's like the last stage you do before you fight the final boss. I'm just wondering if I can do that. I'm really going to have to when we get to that. I don't know when it's going to happen. It might be June, July, who knows when I'll get to it by that point. But just to kind of say, like, I just dread wondering if I can still do that like I could back in the 90s. This is kind of the thing. But it's alright, folks. We're about at the end of this episode, so we'll get to part 16, and hopefully we'll possibly, I don't know if we'll get out of World 6 yet, but just to kind of say, yeah, there's probably another stage or two left to really do. I want to say that this is stage 3, so part 16 is going to be filled with more stuff like this. But alright, so subscribe for more fun. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful night, and I'll see y'all basically in part 16.